You're up to 3. Baby. Well, I guess Matt's started us. I saw him waving up there. We're live, yes. We do the teaching part live, and then when we do the prayer part, we will turn it off and do it private, just for at least during the live part. Yes, during the live part, if you make a comment or a question, please use the microphone. We get yelled at all the time because nobody can hear what's going on. It is turned on, but my sound guy is. Oh, the speakers aren't on. Are this? Oh, there he goes. Better. We're right on top of things this evening. And this is a really important announcement in case you guys don't know. It is National Ice Cream Day, and Frostbite has got $1 soft serve. So this is important. They don't close till 9. We got plenty of time. Plenty of time. I don't know, but we will find out. You can just get more than one. I'm going to need 3 smalls and stack them together. All right, well, you got it figured out back there, my dear? All right. Well, we will get started. So last week, Pastor preached a little on spiritual warfare, and this morning, Ralph touched on spiritual warfare. I think we're going into that more next week. And tonight, I actually had spiritual warfare, so apparently we are paying attention to what God is doing. And so spiritual warfare for this class, I know everybody thinks because this is the prophetic class and it gets a little weirder in here sometimes that we're going to talk about, go marching down the Jerichos and taking down the principalities and casting out demons and people floating around, but we are actually not going to deal with any of that stuff, mostly because at the moment we don't have to deal with that stuff, and I don't know that I could teach you how to. I haven't had an encounter that way where, somebody was manifesting demons in a service or so on. So we're not even going to worry about any of that stuff. And let's just start with the real basics, spiritual warfare in our personal lives, because that's what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Those other weird stories happen, and it's something we may have to deal with, but they are going to come so infrequently. And for many of us, you may never encounter that. But we do have to deal with it every day of our lives for us personally and our families. So let's focus on that. All right, and so spiritual warfare really is all about perspective. It's all about our perspective. And so this is real basic, but you guys know this, light versus dark. Pastor said this in his sermon a couple, 2 Sundays ago, right? That there's no battle between good and evil or God and Satan. It's just God. Period. That was his quote, God, period. If you walk into a dark room and you turn the lights on, there's no battle between the light and the darkness, and then hopefully the light wins and the light turns on, right? So when we are talking about light and darkness, it's not a battle between light and dark. The battle is whether or not the lights are turned on. So a lot of people in prophetic circles, they're shadow boxing. They spend an awful lot of time fighting darkness rather than just turning on the lights. So this is kind of what we did last week, right? Or not last week, but last time we had our class, we talked about, for those of you who weren't here, what would the glory of God look like in our city and in our jobs? And we tried to push out of the church mindset where we talk about, well, there would be peace and love, or we would go in and have a prophetic word for somebody. No, the glory of God is so much more than that. So innovation and growth and creativity and prosperity and all of these things that we were praying for over our jobs and trying to be really just creative in our thinking, like with Lisa, we were praying that she was a diner, that they would have innovative new recipes that would draw people in, so that they could open another location, right? And how that would bring up jobs and so on it's Dundee, right? Right, in Dundee, and then Haines City, and then who knows where else, we could spread out. And so in that essence, we're not just praying the spirit of poverty away, we are turning on the light by inviting the kingdom of God to come in. All right? And so we're connecting with the truth, shifting our focus. Here's what I wrote. Shifting our focus to declaring and praying the heart of God rather than spending our time fighting with the darkness, connecting with truth and turning on the lights, so to speak. So let's take a minute and talk about strongholds and principalities. So how many of you have heard people say, or they can talk about how hard a city is, or how dark a particular place is, or that this city or this area has a stronghold of lust or murder or hate or any of those sorts of things? That is, to some extent, very true. We know, for example, in the U.S., because we are a very rational-minded people, there really is there's a stronghold of intellectualism. So when we are talking about things like this, seeing in the spirit realm and angels and demons and so on, that seems very weird to a lot of people. It is not the cultural norm. Whereas if you go to other countries around the world, that is absolutely normal. If you say, oh, that guy down the corner is demon-possessed, nobody would blink an eye. It's angels, demons, spirits, whatever. So that is actually a stronghold over the United States. There's an author I recently read who's from Australia, and one of the things she had to deal with in her life was that in Australia they call it the tall poppy syndrome, or the big brother spirit. And so it's part of the culture that anytime anybody starts to rise up and get really good at something, or get blessed, or something good is going on, they got to knock them down to size, right? Tall poppy, you can't, the big brother spirit, you can't be, everybody's got to keep them down at the same level. And so when she came out of Australia and came into ministry, she had this stronghold. She didn't even realize how she had been trained to act. So strongholds, principalities, and so on, they are a thing. But here's the thing. The demons don't create a culture. They don't create the stronghold, okay? They come in and set up shop because of the culture that we have created. So it's what we allow. So a good example of this is if you drive down Highway 60 and go into Tampa, right, there's that area where when you come in and there's all those strip clubs. There's 5 or 6 of them, all run right after another. I would guess if you were to hang out in that part of town very long, you would realize very quickly there's probably quite a stronghold of lust there. But that spirit didn't just show up, decide I'm going to set up shop here, this is mine, and then suddenly all the strip clubs came up. What probably happened, somebody started a strip club, and now that's the culture that's being developed, and now that opens doors for spirits to come in and take charge of things and so on. So going in and telling a principality to leave over your city without actually changing the culture that it is feeding off from, again, that's shadowboxing. That's going to be my word all evening, is shadowboxing, is how often the church spends their time punching at darkness, which is totally ineffective when they need to be just turning on the lights. Demons they're just parasites, right? They come in and they're going to feed off from whatever's already there, whereas if you can get rid of the host, you're going to get rid of the principality, you're going to get rid of the strongholds that are in it. So, the other thought, that perspective we need to get in our head, besides the light is dark, the culture, is that the demonic realm is a lot less pervasive than I think we realize. So I might contradict Ralph here. You said something this morning, so you and I can duke out our theology later. But I think because of TV shows, we seem to have this perspective that we all have a demon on one shoulder and a little angel on the other, and they're constantly in this battle telling us, eat the donut. No, don't eat the donut. Or go there and drink that. No, don't do that. This constant battle. And I don't think that is the case. So, for example, personal angels, the Bible can give multiple references to everybody having a guardian angel or a personal angel. So you can find it in Psalms when it says, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. So in everything you do, there's someone there to guard you. In Matthew 18, right, when he's talking about children, see that you do not look down on any of these little ones, for I tell you, their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father, right? So they're angels, implying that they have an angel that is in connection with God, looking out for them. There's also the story in Acts where Peter comes out of jail, and he comes to the door, and what does Rhoda say? It's his angel. They think it's his angel because in the Jewish culture, they believed everyone had a personal angel and that it looked like them. So it wasn't that she didn't see Peter, she just assumed that was Peter's angel at the door. And why would she assume that there was an angel there if seeing angels was not a common sight? Right? Have you ever thought about that? Like, how would she confuse Peter for an angel if an angel was so rare, you would just assume that was Peter. But if seeing angels was a common thing for them, then it would make sense that she would assume Peter's still in jail and it's the angel at the door. All right? And so, practically speaking, if we think about numbers of angels and demons, because this always comes up, is what do we talk about that, kind of generally believe that a third of the angels were cast down as heaven. That's kind of the accepted theology. There's some debate on what all of that, revelation means, but that's kind of the accepted idea. So if we all have a personal angel, but there was only a third of the demons cast out, that either means one thing, or one of two things. There are way more angels and demons than we even realize, because there's 6 billion people in the world, and that number is constantly growing. So there's got to, and we know there's principalities and angels of worship and angels of healing. So the numbers have to be we can't even believe it. Or God is creating new angels as we go. God is the creator. It says he created heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested. It didn't say he retired or he stopped creating. That's part of his nature, is to create things. That's who he is. Just like it's his nature to be good and it's his nature to love. So either way, whatever side we choose to think of, I haven't done a ton of theological study to have an idea of what it is. The demons are much less than the angels. That's what we'll say. There are far less demons than there are angels. All right, so there's far less darkness than there is light. And remember, Satan, he's a fallen angel. He can't create. So it's not like he's out there making more of his little army. He's got what he's got, and that's it. He can only pervert. He can only twist things around. There's this story. I'm going back to that Blake Healy again. Tim got me involved in his books. So if you are curious about seeing in the spirit realm, his books have really challenged me, and I've loved them. But he's a guy who, since he's a child, has just seen angels and demons with his natural eye always. He teaches. He's over the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry in the Atlanta church. And so he tells a story about being at a Christian conference, and he said he looked in the spirit realm because he had a question, so he was trying to see what was going on. And of course he saw there were 600 to 650 people all coming back to their seats after a break. And so there were all them with all their personal angels. Then there were some worship angels getting some things ready for the service, and some healing angels coming in. And then there were the protection angels, right? And so you can imagine now there's 700-800 angels just in this one room alone. And then he said, and there were about 30 demons, which is about normal for a group that size. Now, obviously, this is a Christian conference, so that's going to make a little difference because there's a culture there, right? What culture we host is going to draw things in. But I loved how he said, that was about typical, 30 demons for 600 people. And it really puts things into perspective if we believe that what he says is true. Again, this is his perspective and his experience, so we got to take everything with a grain of salt. But it really fights against this idea that we all have these personal little demons sitting on our shoulders all the time, constantly trying to harass us and tempt us and get us to do the wrong thing. In Blake Healy. So demons are opportunists. They will take what they can get. I think I stole this quote right from one of the books. The Bible compares the enemy to a roaring lion looking for whom he may devour. The implication is that he cannot devour just anyone. He must look for whom he may devour. Demons are looking for what they can get away with, how big of a lie they can get you to believe, how discouraged they can get you to be, how many lies they can get you to believe about yourself, and how many lies they can get you to believe about God. Lies are the only power the demons have, and lies are only powerful if you can believe them. So they only take what you give them, or they can only exploit what is already there. So it's a little like we're the sheriff, and the demons have guns, but they can't use them if we don't deputize them, if we don't give them authority. So let's go back, right? We were just discussing the culture of a city is what creates principalities and strongholds. Well, the culture that you cultivate in yourself and in your home is also going to open or shut doors to things coming in. That's why I think I maybe don't, some people may think everybody's got a personal demon. I wouldn't necessarily argue with them. Again, the Bible's not clear on that. So, but I know that for me, that's not acceptable in my house. I'm not going to create a culture that allows that. And I think there are some people who do really struggle. They may feel like they are constantly hearing oppression and lies and so on, but I don't. But I have taken a stand and said, we are not going to deal with that. I'm not going to listen to that. And eventually, if a demon's opportunist, I'm not a very good opportunity for the most part. So, in your own life, really important, what doors are you opening? What are you feeding? What lies are we believing about ourselves and God? Right now, a good example is the spirit of fear. There are so many people suffering under a very heavy, oppressive spirit of fear because of everything that's going on. And they can come in and we can pray over them. We can tell that spirit to leave and it will leave. But then if they go home and watch every news story they can get and get every update and watch, the TV and everything, read everything they can, well, it's a little like just opening that door back up and saying, come back on in, because this is the culture I am cultivating in my home or in my heart. So the best way to fight something like fear or fight temptation or fight a lie is really to just get so in tune with God's voice that you can't hear it anymore. You need to be so in tune with the light and what is going on that you just aren't a good opportunity anymore. You're not worth it. You're not worth it. Finally, brothers, and sisters, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about such things. I'm going to steal another of his stories because he has a little more experience in this one than I do. But he said he was in a coffee shop, and again, it was typical. Everybody had their little angels, and there were a few demons looking around, just waiting for that moment. And he was watching this girl, and she was on her computer, and he said she got this look on her face, and he could tell that she was upset by something, like she just read something that hurt her feelings or upset her. And it was like that demon, was right there, like on top of it, and was trying to climbed up right on her shoulder and was ready to start twisting at her thoughts and whatnot. And he said she just kind of stopped for a minute, sat up straight, shook her head, kind of knocked the demon off, and went on, right? So she chose not to follow that path down. Sometimes I think we take the littlest things and we make so much out of them we allow them to grow and fester into something huge. And the next thing you know, we believe we are under this great attack, or we're under all this great oppression. And we would be shocked, I think, if we could, see how small and weak and puny that demon was. And that all he did was feed one little lie. And then we created the rest of that oppression all of ourselves. The other thing we want to, I've been harping on wholeness and healing, the importance of healing. It's kind of one of my go-tos. Wounds make us, it's like a big target for demons. Because here's the deal, if I walked over to Donna and I, poked her on the shoulder, it might hurt a little. She'd slap my hand away. Wouldn't be a big deal. But if she had a big bruise on her shoulder, or she had a wound on her shoulder that was still healing, and I poked it, I would have her attention in a big, big way. And it was the same action, just a little poke, just a little poke, just a little poke. I remember, last year, somebody made some offhand comment to me about texting, like I'd texted him a lot that day. There was nothing to that comment other than they were trying to find something I texted them, and they were like, oh man, I got some text from you today. That was all it was. But it hit a wound, and I froze. And this fear and this anxiety came over me, and I literally couldn't breathe. It was a comment that meant nothing, but it hit a very open wound that I was still wrestling with. And so I had to go home, and I remember getting up in the morning after sleeping on it and said, okay, God, now that I'm a little rested, thinking, speak truth to me. What is going on here? I need to hear your truth, and I promise I will believe what you say, because I know that everything I'm thinking and feeling right now is being filtered through this lens of pain and this one bad experience. And if I follow this down this road, I could destroy a relationship. I could destroy, we do it. We destroy ministries, we destroy jobs, we destroy people all over these teeny little things that are nothing, right? And so we talk about, and it's funny to me how often people will say, well, a spirit of division just got in that church. No, that spirit probably didn't do anything but poke one little wound, and you did all of the rest. Demons are not nearly so powerful as we somehow seem to believe. They were really good at just getting us to do all of their work for them. I would say they're probably pretty lazy little slugs of nastiness. All right, so wholeness, spiritual warfare, perspective, and wholeness, heart wholeness. You want to fight against what's coming at you, you need to be whole in order, so you're not you were talking about this morning when you talked about the bubble and some of the arrows getting through. A lot of those those holes in those bubbles are often our wounding. It's areas where we're offended. And the thing with offense is, I don't like that word because we always assume offense is somebody got mad about something and walked out. But offense is also hurt, right? And so you truly could be victimized in a situation and still be carrying offense that is causing you to not see God, or causing you to be very easy bait for satanic attacks and so on. All right. The thing with the church sometimes is it seems that we spend all our time focusing on good behavior versus raising up healthy sons and daughters. Being good doesn't heal a broken heart. But healing a broken heart often results in behavior and character that is good, because at this point now you are wanting to please the Father, and you are not necessarily, so much of what we do wrong and so much of our sin and our temptation comes because of pain and because of need. What do we always say? Some of the people doing the worst things in a church or in your community are often the most broken. You fix that, and you will fix the behavior. So, quick kind of recap here. Effective spiritual warfare, so it's the right perspective, light versus dark. The demonic is not bigger than God. There's no fight there. So I think we really make it so much bigger and scarier than what it really is. So that's number one. Number two, wholeness. And what is the culture you're creating in your house and with you? With the culture, one of the examples I was going to give is, it's funny, is that I just had family over, and I get this all the time when they come in my house. It's so peaceful here. It's always so peaceful here. And you would think it's just because we live on the lake, the waves are pretty. We used to get that when we lived in Nashville, in a little house in town. There was no pretty waves on the lake. But our pastor would come over, and he'd about fall asleep in the chair every time. And the first thing he would say when he walked in the door was, "It's so peaceful here. So peaceful here." And the other day we had a Bible study, and pastor was over, and he was petting the dog, and the dog was snoring, and pastor was about snoring, and while the rest of us are, just conked out, That is the spirit that we cultivate in our house and we carry with us. So if you ever walk into somebody's house and you sometimes you automatically feel that tension or you feel uncomfortable or whatnot, well, it's probably what they're cultivating and so on. So, all right, so wholeness, the culture we're creating, connection with God, right? That's turning on the lights, and then connection with people and community, all right? So we were meant to do this together. When we talk about that roaring lion, or we talk about, predators and so on, what do they always pick out? They always pick out the weak and the lame or the old of the pack, right? But here's the deal. They don't just pick out that one. They also have to separate it from the herd, right? They're not going to go after the young zebra because they can't outrun it. Or, we lived in Alaska and it was moose. The wolves wouldn't go after the healthy moose because they were too big and would kill the wolves. So you got to go after the young, the weak, the lame. But you have to separate it from the pack because most packs naturally put them in the center. In fact, there's one, I don't know, they're water buffalo or yaks or some sort of buffalo. They actually stand in a circle, and they'll circle up, and they put the young, the weak, and the old in the center of that circle whenever the predators come, all right? So that's what we do in community, is we are going to surround those who are weak or who are having an issue, who are going through something, who are dealing with something, right? And we are protecting them from the predators. The problem is what happens is we get offended, we get hurt, and our first instinct is to leave the pack. And it may be very well that the people who hurt you are part of the pack, but it's also more than likely that you already have a wound there, and they really it was a little like throwing salt on it, something that was already there that you hadn't dealt with yet. And so as hard as it is, if you are going through something, you're mad, you're offended, you hurt, you're victimized, whatever it is, do not leave the pack. Do not leave the pack, because you've already got a big target on your head. And if you leave the pack, now you've lost the protection of the herd and of those who are coming around you. And of course, and I know that, let's be honest, not every church has a healthy culture. And sometimes it's the church that are casting out throwing them to the wolves, so to speak. That's the phrase. And I think we've probably all been in church and community long enough that we've experienced that or felt that. And if that is your case, I am sorry. We are trying very hard here to create something different. We are trying very hard to build that culture of honor. And right now we're still building. All right, so there's still stuff. But that's part of what this class is, and what you guys as leaders are, is that you're committed to helping us build that and get us to that place where we feel like we are a safe place for whoever to come in, so we can get them healthy and build community, So spiritual warfare. All right. And then one last thing, going into dark places. So for example, a New Age fair, red light districts, all of those things. Remember that light wins. Light wins. There is no battle. There is no battle. I say this because as a person who is a missionary, I have been to all of these places. I've been in Hindu temples and Islamic mosques, and I was at a New Age fair just last year accidentally. I thought it was an art festival. It's like, this is not what I thought it was. You've been to some very dark. I was on Bourbon Street as a missionary, at night. Not during the day, at night. In a voodoo shop and all of those things. We've seen all of that. I've been to all of those places. As a church, we tend to create rules about those sort of things. And we don't realize that these rules are based on a spirit of fear, right? We say, don't go in there because you'll get that darkness rub off on you. You get a demon that's going to attach to you. You might be tempted and fall into sin if you go into that red light district and minister to a prostitute or so on. And so we are being motivated by a spirit of fear, and then we pat ourselves on the back and say it's godly wisdom. If you are ever motivated by fear, that is not of God. Now, is there such a thing as wisdom? Yes. If you are a person who has struggled with a pornography addiction and you are still coming out of that and dealing with lust, going on a mission trip to a red light district to minister to prostitutes, you might not be wisdom. But simply not going as a healthy, whole Christian because you might see a scantily clad woman in the window and be tempted, that's a spirit of fear, not wisdom. And just imagine if a whole group of men were to march into a red light district, treat women who have spent their whole lives abused and treated as objects, look them in the eye, and treat them as sisters and as worth. Imagine how much more powerful that would be. Light always wins. When you go into a dark place, you are like the torch. It's like you are on fire. And as soon as you walk in, the very atmosphere is going to change simply because you are there, because you carry the Holy Spirit, because you carry the light. You don't have to battle it out. You don't have to fight. You don't have to walk in and call down all the principalities. You just know that when you walk in, it changes because you carry light, and light wins, no contest. So when I went to that art festival and I got in, I was like, oh, this was not what I thought. I didn't say, oh, I have to leave. I might get something rubbed off on me. Oh, it's dangerous here. Have a bad dream tonight. No, I said, well, I'm here. I bring the light. It's going to change things. So I went in and enjoyed the festival. Now, there were a few areas that I remember thinking, felt a little uncomfortable. So I just straightened my shoulders, prayed in tongues quietly under my breath. I didn't go explore there. That maybe was a little much. But we went through, and we had a good time. And, there's a story in the book. I'm stealing all his stories. But he talks about a similar situation where he was on he had all these youth on a mission trip, and it was their fun day. So they went down to this famous pier somewhere in California or whatever. Well, of course, there's all these shops, so it'd be a little like New Orleans, like there's the good shops next to the voodoo shop, next to the tourist shop, next to the hippie with his Wiccan spells, next to the, all on down. So it could be kind of dark at times. And he said when he looked in the spirit, he just saw all of these angels just coming in because they're following the kids and what they're carrying, their personal angels and other angels. And you could literally just see, obviously, because of the culture created in these people's lives, there was a lot more demonic activity. But he would watch, even as he walked by a booth, the demons just kind of slither under the table and go off. And he'd watch the person in the booth just sit up a little straighter, breathe a little deeper, and just kind of look around because something had changed, even for a moment. And so spiritual warfare, you have to understand what you carry. You know, our job is not to run around yelling at demons to leave and rebuking them. We got to stop shadow boxing. All right, that's my phrase, shadow boxing. Punching at the darkness. It's not doing us any good because we're not hitting anything. We got to turn on the light. Turn on the light. Bring truth, bring cultural change, bring God into the situation. All right, so that is tonight's quick teaching. And so we are going to take a 2-minute break, and then we will, questions. He hasn't turned it off yet.
Sort of going along with what you're saying, and I don't remember the term, but anyhow, the spiritual weapon of ignoring. Okay, Chris said for a year he was tormented every single night by a demon, and finally God said, I'm going to teach you something, and he said, just ignore it. So the one next night, the spirit came and stood at the foot of his bed and made all kind of faces and did all kind of things, and Chris looked up and said, oh, it's you, and rolled over and went back on his bed, and he never saw him again. And Bob Jones, the same way. Spirit came at his bed, and he said, oh, it's you, and just rolled over and put his head on the pillow and went back to sleep. So
there's a story with Bob Jones and Larry Randolph. Stayed in a hotel.
I was going to mention
and they
that.
got up the next morning, and Larry was like, man, I didn't sleep at all. And Bob goes, oh, there's a demon in their room, wasn't it? And Larry's like, yeah, how did you go know? He goes, oh, it woke me up first. And I said, oh, Larry's in the next room. You want him? All right. Does anybody else have a comment or a question before we move on to round 2? Yes.
So there was this theory how darkness was really nothing. Like you can't measure darkness, you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it. But darkness was the absence of light.
Yeah.
So darkness wouldn't even be anything if it was just full of light, because light is something, and yeah, that's all.
No, that was actually one of the phrases I think that in one of the books was, darkness is just the absence of light.
Right.
It is nothing. Right. Just turning the lights on. All right, well, let's take a minute and then we'll come back through together and we'll do some activations and some prayers.